Hello, Phil Swann here again with another episode of Together, where we look at well-being, good mental health, and the Christian hope. Well, this week is known by some people as Holy Week or Easter week. It's the week where we remember the events leading up to the death and the resurrection of Jesus on Good Friday, his death, and on Easter Day, Easter Sunday, his resurrection from the dead. Those two events are massive for Christians, Good Friday and Easter Day. And they are extreme in the contrast that we see. On Good Friday, there is always that challenge to anybody who's new to Christianity. Why in the world would you call the crucifixion of Jesus good? What's so good about Good Friday? It's a really important question, isn't it? But the answer is, it is good not because of the evil that is being done to him, but it is good because of what he is accomplishing for us in and through his death. One Christian thinker simply put it this way, that in the death of Christ, we see the death of death. I wonder what it is, the biggest thing that you struggle with. I think if I'm honest with you, most people, the biggest thing they struggle with is regret in one shape or form or another. They struggle with guilt, or you struggle with shame. Those two terrible things. Guilt for the things we know we did wrong. Shame, the experience when others point the finger at us. Heavy burdens of guilt and shame can set the course for our lives. If we're not careful, we can find ourselves living in such a way that we're afraid of our own shadow because of failure in the past, failure to be the people that we think we should be. How do we deal with this? What do you do with guilt and shame? How do you get rid of it? Well, of course, there are many things that people will suggest. Unhealthy guilt definitely needs to be addressed. But the Christian hope points us to Good Friday. That in the death of Christ, as brutal and terrible and horrific as it was, he is dealing with the root power behind all the evil in our world right now and all the distress in our lives. There is great evil in our world. Sometimes it's more obvious than others. And right now we see it with what's happening in Ukraine, the evil that is being done, the suffering that's been experienced. What is behind that? It's not simply political ambition, neither is it kind of hostility between nations. No, the great driver in the issue in the Ukraine is sin. What is sin? Sin is ultimately the absence of goodness. But sin is that breaking of God's laws, not loving our neighbor as ourselves, not loving God as we should love him. The power of sin driving the horrors in Ukraine. And it is the same power, the power of sin, that drives our own secret terrors, our own shame, our own sense of guilt. But at the cross, and this is why Good Friday is good, at the cross, Jesus takes our sin and deals with it once and for all. Great cry on the cross, ultimately, before he dies. It was one word in the Greek of the New Testament, tetelestoi. It's a word that would be used when a bill had been paid off in full. Often it's translated in the English version of the Bible as, it is finished, it's been completed. And it was with that loud cry that Jesus then offers up his spirit and dies. What was being finished? the great work of breaking the power of sin and paying off the debt that we have all run up with God. You see, there is a place where guilt and shame is dealt with. It can be dealt with, and you can be relieved of it by going to Christ and asking him for the forgiveness of your sins, past, present, and future. And the wonderful thing is that the Bible tells us that Jesus says, whoever comes to me, I'll never turn away. And that really does mean you. However great your shame may be, however deep your sense of guilt may be, there is forgiveness to be found and received. And this is why faith in Jesus becomes something powerful and transformative. And you say, well, how can I really rely on that? How can I know that it is as simple as that and as true as this? And the answer is Easter Day. When the women went down to the tomb, they went expecting to see the tomb sealed up with the body still inside. But when they got there, to their horror, the stone had been removed and the body wasn't there. They thought it'd been stolen by grave robbers. But then in a moment, everything changes. When one of those women, Mary, turns and sees a chap who she thought was the gardener who was to be looking after where the tombs were, and she asks him, let me know what they've done with his body. And with one word, her world changes, and with that word, our world changed. For it wasn't the gardener, it is Christ, and he turns to Mary and simply says, Mary. He calls her by name. We can be confident that Calvary deals with our sin and our shame and all of our guilt because Jesus Christ has been raised from the dead. He has broken the power of sin, which is death. And he calls you today and me and invites us to know him and the freedom from it all. There's an old chorus that sometimes gets sung in church. Burdens are lifted at Calvary, and they are. What burden are you carrying today? Hidden deep within your soul, private and known only to yourself, and yet affecting your life in so many ways. Bring it to Christ today. Confess it to him. Ask for his forgiveness, and he will lift that burden and make you whole.